Hallo, liebe Freunde des gepflegten Brettspiels und herzlich willkommen zu dem Interview mit Tim Fowers und Jeff Krause. Ja, die haben das Spiel Sabotage gemacht und ja, mit Skellig zusammen haben wir jetzt das Interview und Georg und mir natürlich. Und eigentlich wollte ich Sabotage jetzt klauen, aber ihr könnt euch dafür einfach das Video angucken und ja, ist zwar auf Englisch, aber ich wünsche euch trotzdem viel Spaß dabei. So yeah, welcome here to the interview. We have here Tim Fowers and Jeff Krause for the game Sabotage. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, awesome. And from the Brettspiel Suchtis, we have Georg. You heard him already. Hi, Georg. And me, Dennis. Hi. So yeah, we have some questions for you, of course, and we want to know more about you and your game Sabotage. So also thank you, Skellig, for making this happen. And we asked the people on Facebook for some questions they had, and we will ask them too. So are you all ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Then, yeah, how are you?
We're good. Good. We've been lucky. So we live across the street from each other. Mm-hmm. So we're just kind of quarantining together. So we just continued to make games.
Yep.
And it hasn't really slowed us down much. So, but yeah, I mean, we've also been working. I mean, our most recent project is we're wrapping up Burgle Bros 2, mm-hmm. getting ready to sign that off to the manufacturer, and then Jeff is also a programmer, and we've been doing various programming experiments and projects and whatnot.
Yep.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go to the first question. So some comments in the World Wide Web stated that Sabotage is a bigger version of Battleship with enhanced gameplay and possibilities. So was this your intention because you like Battleship gameplay, or wanted to build a game around that mechanic, or how does Sabotage came in your mind?
I mean, so I remember the conversation, but I don't remember the first like impetus. We had kind of a mechanic from another game that we were mm-hmm. canceling.
Yep.
At that moment. Mm-hmm. But where did the hidden movement come
from? We were messing around with this other mechanic for a real-time strategy video game, porting it to a board game. And so we were messing around with like this fog of war type thing that you get in real-time strategy games. And so we were like, okay, we have this fog of war type thing. What if we make this into a stealth game where someone's trying to find each other? And so that was kind of the very original idea.
Yeah.
And then Tim always had this idea from Splinter Cell, which is this video game where they have this competitive mode where it's spies versus these mercenaries, and they have different sets of tools, and it's asymmetric, and the spies are trying to come in and find
hack. It's something. It's hack.
There you go, hack. Yeah. I haven't played it.
I remember that. It was an awesome gameplay.
Yeah. That stuck with me for a long time. And so once we started talking about that, there's also an economy thing. The way that the roll and write, the core mechanism, like you roll 4 dice, but based on how well your economy is doing, you get to choose a subset of those to use. Mm-hmm. So you get flexibility, and there, whatever. That's another thing that came from that other game. But once we started talking about that, I'd been. It's one of those, kind of grail games. Like one of those games I've wanted to make for a long time was this stealth gameplay, and there was certainly some Captain Sonar in there very early as well, where it's like this kind of double blind, hunter hunted kind of feeling we were going for. But it came together pretty quickly. We had, do I have it? Give me a second. You talk.
Where's that? The core mechanics of the game, we got together really fast. And the scan and move mechanics and the different technologies and different weapons that people had, we had together pretty quickly. And it was a lot of refinement of just making it more accessible for people. There's a lot of those steps. Okay, here we go.
It's been sitting on my desk.
There we go.
This is the original. This was like 2 days in.
Yep.
Where this is the grid. We had the same 4x4 grid, and you'd have walls and stuff. And this was one. This is a sheet, and you'd put this in a slip cover, and you would write on it. So it was a roll and write basically. But you would have to be able to erase because you'd move your guy around the grid. And in this case, instead of having particular character sets, these are all the different weapons that a villain could get. So based on what you wanted to spend, I think you could only take one from each column or something like that. But it's all here. It's like, here's the generators. Here's all kind of the lower tier and then higher tier weapons. And and your basic move, like the pistol, the flashlight, and the move. That's all. It's all there from the very beginning. And so we tested this out, and it was working. Like we were really happy with how it was playing. And it, and then there was a couple of pivots along the way that got it to the form it's in now. But it was one of those kind of, I felt it was really like 80% there within that short window. So what other questions you got?
Yeah, the characters from Sabotage are clearly, they have similarities with one from the Burglar Brothers. So, yes. Do you intend to build a Tim and Jeff universe of characters, or?
We kind of have already. So it started with the Burgle Bros in this kind of 60s heist kind of setting, and then Fugitive. Fugitive is when one of them is trying to actually, if you look at the first card in Fugitive, it's the bank from Burgle Bros. So it's like him escaping the scene of the crime. And then this is the first one that we had really brought. I mean, we had done little cameos in other games. Like they're in a little bit, they're in Now Boarding, but they're just like the pilots, they're not a big part of it. But what we wanted to do is, because it involved this sneaking vibe, we wanted to create this fiction where the government has to call on the Burgle Bros to save the day, because only they can infiltrate this volcano lair of the supervillains. And then we brought in Count V from Word Domination, which is actually Jeff Beck's game, but by the same artist. And so that's where we actually merged the two worlds. And then we brought a couple of new villains in. So they are the same. The spies are the same as the 4 Burgle Bros characters. They've just been put on this special mission. So
first Burgle Bros, then Fugitive, then Sabotage.
Yeah, yeah. And now Burgle Bros 2, and yes. So yes, there's the universe. We do have a comic book that we made. There's actually, it's if you go to, I think there's a link I can provide. That it's a 4-page comic of one of the Burgle Bros heists, and you get to see their dialogue back and forth. And
awesome.
So we've done a little bit to kind of flesh out the characters.
So back to Sabotage, play version in the early days, and it was a bit different than the final product, also different than yours. You showed before. Did you have system or the Gamebox integration already in mind? So you said, yeah, there was some kind of that, but or was it like the process over time? Then you saw, hey, we can add this and make the box like the shield to cover it.
That was pretty early. I mean, it was because we know we needed a divider, and we were looking at Captain Sonar, and we're like, well, they're using all this cardboard. Is there a way that we can get more mileage out of having a game box and needing a shield for the game? And then we were working with Game Trays. So Game Trays, he does the injection or the vacuum molds for the different trays in a lot of games. We started working really closely with him, and he is extremely talented mechanical engineer. And he came up with the idea for the vacuum tray on top to keep score, because there's a mutual information that both sides need. And so he's like, oh, we can mount this. And then he actually engineered the way that the box opens, kind of those, I say it's like a DeLorean. It's like, like the car. And he engineered it so it didn't need magnets, and it was actually really, really secure. So it was, and I've continued to involve Noah from Game Trays on my boxes since. Like, this is our current prototype. These are the miniatures for Burgle Bros 2 in their little undercover van, and then this is all the miniatures in their little. So Noah from Game Trays is extremely talented at both trays and boxes.
I love
And that's kind of,
they have awesome ideas to fit everything together.
he's super, super clever. And then, but gameplay wise, when did we get into programming with the dice instead of the?
Well, I mean, it came about pretty early on that we kind of switched over. We just kind of got tired of like cleaning off the plastic from the roll and write
version that you have to cross what you do. And I saw then when I unboxed the game, so okay, they made it with tiles, so yeah, that's
oh yeah, in the Kickstarter we did have, I mean, so first it was both the map was dry erase marker and your programming. And then we made the map into a physical thing, but we still had your programming on this dry erase sheet in a little fold out, a little open up, vignette. But then during the middle of production, we were working with Heiko. Heiko, I can't remember his last name. He's been involved with a lot of different board game designs. He's actually the original graphic artist behind Burgle Bros 1 for the design of the tiles, the rooms. And he put his mind to this problem of how to program, and he came up with the current player boards with the 4 slots and putting the dice right on it, and he worked out the sizing and all that, and then how you keep the ones you're going to unlock all along the top. And we pivoted the Kickstarter to include that, and we feel like it's a lot more physical and just it generally has a better feel, and works fine for programming, because then you put the dice on instead of, because before you had to abstract, you're like, okay, I'm using these 2 dice to program this move on and write it down, but when I could just take the dice and put them on what I'm doing, we found it more accessible. So, what other pivots did we make along the way?
I mean, a lot of just balance around making it just more fair on one side. If like a team falls behind, like giving them some sort of boost to kind of make it so like they have a chance to come back.
Yeah, that was like when the big change was when you got shot with the taser, that you would lose both swagger, so you lose dice, and you would lose swagger, and
you lose your turn.
And you lose your turn. Yeah, you lose. Yeah, you because you go after the villains. Yeah, and so we split that. So now you lose when you're sighted, but you lose your turn when you're shot, and you have to come back on board. So that allowed people to not get kind of the double penalty. But we've always wanted to have a sting to getting caught. We want to give you multiple chances, but it was important to definitely have it hurt and mess up your plans when you get shot. So that when you outwit them, it feels that much better. I don't know. We can gab about what other questions you got, because we can.
Yeah, many board game designers do the design for a living. Do you also have this as a main approach, as a main job, or do you have some other jobs which give you some money to get something to eat?
No, I've been full-time for 5 years, just making games. So it's been working out really well. But I mean, we don't have a lot of overhead. We have a couple of people that help us, but we don't really have like employees. He's not my employee. He's my design partner. And you've been at this 3 years?
Yeah, I've been making games for about 3 years now. And I also, this is my full-time job. And
well, we do make apps. So
right.
So Jeff programmed Hardback and Burgle Bros and the Sabotage companion app. He programmed all of that by himself, and those make income, as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So one of the question also was, what would Tim Fowers do if it did not have been worked out with board games?
Oh, well, I mean, so I did video games. So my history was I did a little bit. I did some I was a programmer, and I was a bad one. And I worked in medical imaging, and so I would probably be there. But then I went into making video games. I made the video game Now Boarding in 2008, and that had a mild success. You go to nowboarding.us, it's still kind of kicking around. And then eventually I worked with Amazon. They had a game studio in Southern California, and I worked for 3 years there as a video game designer. So I've kind of been both, and we're still trying video game stuff. We just you don't see them because they usually get canceled before we release them. But we've really enjoyed. We're very much on the same page on the types of design goals we have, and so we work really well together. I'm kind of the crazy reach out and pull crazy things together, and then I bring it to Jeff, and he helps me analyze the design space. He's like, okay, within that space, you should try all these things. Like, when we were making weapons for Sabotage, it's like we had defined everything. I'm like, okay, what are all the things that the players can do? And he just started rattling off. He's like, well, this would be a weapon, this would be a weapon, this would be a gadget, this would be a gadget. We haven't interacted with this system. And he just like lists them all, and then we would try them out, see which ones work, and kind of filter it out that way. So it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Nice.
So actually, we understand that you are doing several games in parallel, but from an average point, can you give the time schedule from average? What you do from the initial idea to the final product? How long would it take?
I would say, a healthy amount is 5 or 6 months to Kickstarter, and then Kickstarter is 9 months usually to print. I used to say 6 months, but it was a little bit under pressure. So in 2018, we did like 2 games that year, 3 games that year, and it was a little too crazy. So I'm trying to get more of a cadence of 1 game a year. But it varies. Like some games I'll wrestle with for a long time, but I would say 2/3 of the games come together pretty quickly. They get to like an 80% level within 2 weeks. So then that happened with Paperback.
Testing is very long, I guess. Playtest.
Yeah. So there's like, this is the core, getting the core idea, getting the new elements in, and getting them working. But yeah, that last 20% is like 5 months. Of like getting it in front of new people, figuring out where to shave off different rules, what do we need to add, what do we need to get rid of. But the core is usually there, and that's been true with most of my games. Is that but it's nice to be able to know that the core is working, because if you don't know that, you don't know what you're balancing against. You need to have kind of a baseline to make it good. I don't know. It's just a process. And so we've been continuing, like with Burgle Bros, like we shipped it, but then we've actually been tweaking and adding, and finally we're just gonna like, okay, we're not gonna add anything else. We're just gonna ship it. You gotta just cut it off at a certain point, because they say you can polish you can polish a stone forever, but if you polish too long, there's nothing left. So we're about that point, and we've got some other stuff cooking, but it's super early. Nothing really tested yet. So.
And what about when you finish a game? So Do you need some vacation then? 6 months vacation for that to get new ideas, to get your battery filled?
No, I mean, we don't really burn. I mean, that's why I say like one game a year. We try not to like burn too hot, and we don't do really long days. So we don't like, we try to keep, but as we bump into ideas, I just put them in a file where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try a little bit with it. And I'm like, okay, this is working, but I really need to finish this other game. So I'm going to just file this. So my current file is 5 different games that I'm really excited to work on once I finish Burgle Bros.
Yeah, we just lock them away and make them as a reward. So when we finish a game, we get to have all this fun time where we can try out all these different ideas.
Yeah.
And so we have a good cadence of like working kind of regular hours, taking weekends off, stuff like that, so that we don't get burnt out.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Generally in games, do you create a theme or mechanics first, or is it different every time?
Yeah, probably mechanics.
It's mostly mechanics first.
Okay.
I mean, I try to bring a theme in really early. Usually it's like, that's usually the first thing is like, okay, this thing is kind of working just like a half of a mechanic, like half of a game. What would mix with that? And you kind of play this like combinatorial thing, like, oh, is it a Chinese restaurant? Is it an airline? And then once you find a fit, then you're like, okay, what does that inform about the design? And then they start to bounce off each other, because you can always say, okay, in this world, what else would there be? Well, there would be these other elements. Okay, what would that mean in the mechanics? And then the mechanics is like, well, we have dice. What else would we use dice for? And then you find a way that could be represented in the theme. And they just really kind of, it's a reaction. They'll bounce off each other. I don't know, it really feels like it kind of designs itself at that point.
Yeah, I think Sabotage was one of the games where I think theme was the thing that came in first for us in Sabotage.
Well, I mean, we just had decided to finish this other game. So we had a mechanic, but the first thought was like, it needs to be
what if we could
Mercs.
Yeah, what if we could turn this into the Splinter Cell game, Spies versus Mercs?
Yeah. So when we say first, it's like it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's not this large gap where we're playing with like just paper and nothing.
No, we don't usually play anything totally abstract without having some sense of what the shape of that world is. With almost everything, there is some kind of, even though there's no art, in our heads we're like, oh, this is what kind of world it's in. With a lot of them. Yeah. So what else?
Yes, I have a question. Actually, I see you two guys acting very, very good together, and you are designing games at least for 3 years together. And how did you get to know each other? So, and you are living close together, just across the street. Is it sheer luck, or do you know each other from high school? Or
Sure. So I'm actually from close to Seattle, Washington. Since we're in Salt Lake City, Utah right now, it's about 1,000 miles away. And I was making video games on my own originally.
Well, self-taught. He taught himself how to program.
Sure, yeah. I taught myself how to program, and I was just making video games on my own. And none of them were doing anything special whatsoever. And one day I played Burgle Bros, and I was like, I wonder if I can just make that into a video game. And so I spent some time and made it into a video game, and I just kind of sent it to Tim in an email, like, hey, I made this thing. Dude, cool. And then Tim's
you
like,
asked me if I could release it.
If I could just release it for free or whatever. And then Tim responded, hey, we should work together on this.
No, we should make an app.
Yeah, you said we should make an app together. And so that's essentially how we started working together. And then I worked remotely.
But I hadn't played the version of his game.
Yeah.
Like it was 2 minutes later I respond.
Yeah, Tim didn't download or anything. He just responded. And then after working remote for about a year, I moved down here. And
been down here for 3 years.
Yeah, down here for 3 years.
But yeah, we go back and forth, and it works pretty well because I'm kind of the board game side of stuff, and he does the video game side of stuff. And so I help him on the video game thing, on the where I can with design, and he helps me with design on board games, and it works. It works well. It's always good to have, because when it's just yourself, it kind of feels like an echo chamber. and you can. So we respect each other in the sense that like when one of us is kind of like driving, like one of us is like, okay, this is the type of thing I want to make. The other person is kind of injecting ideas, but almost like a navigator, where it's just like, well, here's some options, here's some ways you can turn, and we don't try to we don't butt heads over it. It's very clear, like when one of us is running a project, it's like the other person is there to assist and to give ideas, but the other person, there's one person making the final call. So we make it's like a film and there's a director, right? And so sometimes he's a director, sometimes I'm the director, and I don't never really felt any conflict about like we should go one way or the other, because we always defer to whose baby is this, who's driving. So
it's a great relationship, It's good.
Oh, we're lucky,
yeah. So for upcoming board game developers, what would you tell them, like do's and don'ts, because you work together, so you have some
Well, first of all, there is, I do want to, before I forget, there is we do a couple things. We have a thing called Tabletop Network, which is a conference for board game designers. And we've done it for 2 years, and we have a lot of talks and stuff that people have given in the industry. So not just our advice, there's a lot of good advice out there. And then right now, there's a new thing happening during lockdown called Tabletop Mentorship, where you can sign up to be mentored by someone who's experienced in the industry. And it's like Tabletop Mentorship. So I want to plug those two things. But for new designers, mostly is finishing. I mean, that is the real differentiator, because it's so easy. I don't know. It's so easy to just sit there and just, polish and polish and polish and polish, and always believe that it's not the right time. It's like, oh, it needs more work. Oh, it needs more work, and never release anything because it's not good enough. Well, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of things that will only improve through exposure to the real world and to other people and whatnot. So you have to really grow a thick skin and be like, I'm going to take feedback, because you have to separate yourself from your idea. Because a lot of new designers, they feel like if they attack my design, they're attacking me. And you have to be objective about your idea. It could be horrible, and you have to be able to say that your baby is ugly. You have to have that, and getting that out with people. And then also don't just design one game, because also your emotional well-being will be based on how well or poorly that game is doing at that point in development. You need to have another one that you can take a break and be like, okay, I don't know what to do with you, but I'm going to work on this one for a little while. And it helps you separate, again, your emotionality from your games. Now, I don't know if Germans have emotions, so I can't speak to.
Sometimes.
No, Germans have no emotions.
Yeah, I don't want to use stereotypes, but I'm just saying.
We are like
so.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else.
Burgle Bros reminds me a little bit of Ocean's 11 and Sabotage, the classical James Bond movie.
Yes.
So could it be that you have a love for agent or heist movies?
Oh yeah, well, but that's the thing though, is we've been looking at movies a lot lately. I mean, Getaway Driver that Jeff Beck did is also like Gone in 60 Seconds. Fugitive is the movie The Fugitive. Like, no, they're all movies. But what's great about it is it gives us an emotional goal, because it's like when you watch a movie, part of your brain is like, maybe I could do that. Like, I think I could probably pull that off. Like, just saying, I'm not really going to do it, but like, you're kind of going through this experiment of how you would do a thing like that, but just also just the general emotions, and like so in Sabotage, the emotion is very much the tension of that battleship moment of like, you're hiding behind this thing, you're really hoping that whatever feint you did, like, they fall for it, because if not, they're gonna, you're gonna get hit really hard, you're gonna lose your turn, and you're just kind of like wincing, and then there's like this big, like, sigh of relief when they missed or whatever. And it's like there's this emotional spike when you're watching the other side work. And there's also certain frustration when you play Sabotage. We had a lot of players that they felt, we had games where both sides felt like they were underpowered. Well, it's like, well, that's kind of what you want. You're like, everyone feels like they don't have a total advantage in the situation, and they have to figure out, through cleverness, the best way to execute that thing. So yeah, looking at a movie as an emotional baseline of like, when this game is working correctly, you're feeling the same emotions as that film. So the moment where the spotlight is shining across the thing, and James Bond is doing his stealth mission or whatever, does it feel the same? And it becomes just a metric of like, are we moving towards this design goal? And it helps the players know what to expect going in. So when they, that they're kind of primed to feel that way. So that's kind of, philosophical.
So how do you get those great ideas? I see you get it from the movies or for whatever, but what inspires you directly? Do you have a muse or whatever? So.
And also, Hardback was very different. It's not an agent movie. Oh, maybe
a
Fleming game.
Yeah, but they are all contemporary. We did kind of pick this thing like we don't do sci-fi, we don't do fantasy. It's all kind of like mid-century. And so the paperback, right? And so Hardback was the first one where we went and we did like a Victorian theme. So that was a little bit out of our normal theme. But I don't know.
I mean, we just have ideas, and they just kind of happen. Like we don't have like a time or a day. We just like wake up and we're like, what if I made a game like this?
Yeah.
And then
and you have to be flexible to be like, sometimes you're like, no, that is a better game. We need to make that game. And you just like take your current table and just push everything off your table. You're like, we're gonna make this now. Because it's like there is a certain meritocracy to where like, if there's a better idea, it's just like, if that is something that is better or more entertaining or whatever, we're fine pivoting. It's like you can't really believe in sunk cost. And same this is advice for other designers. It's like, even if you have a lot of time into something, if something truly better comes along, you need to be open to pivot to it and not just be like, I'm gonna make this work. Because sometimes you will just kind of shoehorn designs to make them do what you want them to do, or this game has to have everything or whatever, and you push towards these different things. And also just like when you're early on, you also kind of do these kitchen sink designs where this design has everything. Very often I try to find what is the most interesting decisions and what is the newest, most interesting thing about this design, and try to shave, and this actually, Jeff is better at pushing for this. Like Burgle Bros, like we cut a whole floor off of Burgle Bros. Burgle Bros 2 is 2 floor. Yep. And it's just like, I mean, because you always feel like you have to have more, better, best, kind of things. Mm-hmm. And it's like, more isn't always better. And so we're just like, there's a lot of things that we're just like, this is not, this is not for the betterment of the game. And so being okay, cutting major things out of a design because that isn't carrying its weight. We talk about carrying its weight. For all the work you do on this other part of the game, does it really pay dividends? Is that part really fun and worthwhile? Because if this part is doing most of the fun, then we cut that out. Now it's 100% fun instead of like 50-50, So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. One question of our people were the illustrations mostly come from Ryan Goldsberry, who illustrated even Rockstar 10 years ago. So do you have a special relationship with him and his extraordinary art design? So you know that when you see it?
He's an old friend. I had known him since 97. Mm-hmm. Long time ago. And when I was working in 2008, when I was working on Now Boarding, the video game, I just kind of sent an email out to him like, hey, I'm making this thing about an airline, and we kind of want to do it in a 60s thing. And he had some illustration classes he had taken in college. He's a 3D animator, so he was the senior animator on 3 of the Tomb Raider games, or 4 of them. He's very, very experienced in the video game industry. And actually, most of the time, he had been working on those video games. On the side, he was working for me on both video games and board games. So we have like a 13-year relationship working on games together. And so I just trust him a lot. Like when I say, here's some general outlines of what we're thinking for villains or whatever, and we talked about maybe just some broad strokes of both like nationalities and some different representation to have. Even in now boarding, we talked about having a lot of different representation. And then also talking about like, okay, what Bond villain is this one? And be able to be like, it's a combination of, like this guy and this guy, and so we take those so people can see the wink and the nod to those characters. In other ones, he creates whole cloth. But with a lot of the character design, I just give him really broad strokes of like, I want a hacker, and I need an acrobat, and I need whatever, and like that's the whole description. And then he'll do like a couple sketches for each one, but usually he comes back with one sketch. Sometimes he gives me samples, but at this point I trust him enough. He's like, this is it. And I'm like, yep, that's it. So like he just, he's got it, he's got it in his head, and he makes the characters just have tons of personality and look very distinct and attitude and all that.
Awesome, yeah.
So
yeah. In your private time, do you have some private time, leisure time, where you play also other games, or do you have no such time? Or do
what do you play?
I mean, we tried for a while. We tried to play at least one different board game on Fridays. And
we should do that tomorrow.
That worked out. It just allows us to try new stuff. Like recently I played Quacks of Quedlinburg and just see other designs that are out there and see other things that designers are doing. But also I play a lot of video games on my downtime.
Yeah, same here. I play a lot of video games to unwind. And he's usually trying different ones. I usually will have just a couple that are like my comfort food, and I'll just kind of play the same ones. Like Slay the Spire and like Hearthstone and like just slow stuff. I used to do more actiony stuff, but I'm getting too old for that. And Jeff does a bunch of Dota 2.
Yep.
But I don't know. We do try to, as new games come out, we do look for the ones that are doing something really novel. It's like, oh, this is doing something new. We make sure to get it, to play it, and see what's going on with it, to see what new design spaces there are. Because we don't want to be totally isolated in design.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it'll give us great inspiration. So
yeah.
Yeah. So the last question, I think you said it at the beginning, so teased a little bit. The next Fowers game, or what could it be? What agent genre again, maybe? Or
I have 5 games I'm excited about, and 2 of them are sequels. So we'll see.
So
we'll see what wins out.
There's 2 and Burger Brothers 3.
I don't want to get people excited because it's like these things, like they'll get canceled, and I don't want people to be, because we've done that before where we'll like announce a new game and then we get to a certain point in design and we're like, we're not doing it. And so we mostly hold off until it's we're really into, okay, we're prepping this for Kickstarter. We don't until that point, until basically we're out and doing tests at conventions and stuff, is when kind of the first leaks will happen, and that's fine because at that point we're generally confident. But yeah, you gotta have some secrets.
Yeah. So the Essen Spiel is not this year.
No.
Thank you, COVID. But there's a digital event, so maybe.
Sure. I mean, if I would like to do, once we get going, I would like to do some online testing. The last 3 years I've actually brought my family to Essen Spiel. I have a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 15-year-old, and they come and they help in the booth and they teach games and whatnot, and they've really enjoyed Germany and coming over. But so yeah, they're even more disappointed that Essen Spiel is not happening. So
yeah, maybe you can visit us next time here in Karlsruhe. So
sure, yeah,
we're open doors and play with the Brettspielsuchtis.
yeah. And then I mean, I kind of wanted to go to the Hunter and Kron convention as well. We'll see when, you know, in the after times.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are also planning, maybe we can get here a Sabotage gameplay. We against you. So
Yes,
we'll see if we can do this in the future.
yeah. No, we're it plays pretty well remotely because the prescribed, you know, so we accept your challenge.
All right, challenge accepted. Yeah, so thank you very much for the interview. It was fun.
Yeah. Just let us know when and where, and we'll be there.
Yeah. So thank you, Skellig, for making this possible, and I say bye bye, and until next time.
See you guys.
Bye bye.
Awesome.